Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 12 in our series of commentaries on the anatomy of the crisis. Life goes on this another sunny December day. It's great to see you all. At least it's well, actually it's not that sunny, but at least we got Katrina and the waves to start us off. So thanks a lot for everyone for coming. In this series, we interview HR and finance leaders who have not only survived the first 9 months of the crisis, but actually thrived in some way. And we're really looking for positive news and learnings from the COVID crisis and things and tips really for us to take on board ourselves and understand, to inspire us to really get what we can out of this crisis. You know, not letting the positive aspects of the last 9 months go unnoted, and also not letting them going unrecognized and then incorporating to our work going forward. So we're trying to be as positive as possible in the Life Goes On webinars. And so welcome everybody. And all of these past webinars are on our website and available to listen to as podcasts if you'd like to listen to them. So today I'm really excited to explore a new sector, and that is pharma, which I'll be talking today to Claire Harding, who is the Global VP of Human Resources for EUSA Pharma, who are a smaller but very fast-growing pharma company. So welcome, Claire. I'm delighted you're here with us. I'd love it if you could tell us a little bit about your role and a little bit about EUSA Pharma and what you guys have been up to and the experience of COVID.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much, Tom, and welcome to everybody. Yes, so EUSA, difficult company name sometimes to pronounce. So I know a lot of people are not quite sure, and in different countries it comes out very differently. Essentially, it's a combination of Europe and USA, EUSA. That's how the company name came up. So as you said, Tom, we're a relatively small organisation, medium-sized, you might say. We've established 2015. We've rapidly grown. So when we started, we were around 40 people, and today we're just coming up to 300. So it's been quite a quick journey for us. We are established across the globe. However, our headquarters is here in the UK, in glamorous Hemel Hempstead. Yeah, it's just been a really exciting, incredible roller coaster journey over the last 5.5 years. So, as you said, I'm the VP of Human Resources for the company. I've been with them since the first week. Probably a really unusual kind of experience to come into a company where you've got no human resources. You're walking in, everybody's looking at you to start establishing everything from day one. I had more than 100 emails in my inbox on day one, just with all the requests from just the 40 people that joined the company, asking for anything from payroll to how do I book holidays, to questions on other benefits. You know, everything was coming in very quickly, and you just had to get going, get it all established. I've loved it. I have absolutely loved every minute of this. But I didn't come from pharmaceuticals, first of all, so it's been a massive learning curve for me. My very best friend is WikiMed. I spend a lot of time on WikiMed trying to understand what my colleagues are talking about, because it is a whole new language when you come into pharmaceuticals. But it's been, how do I put it? It's been very fulfilling, because I know that what we're doing is really important. You know, a lot of people will say, yeah, what we do is very important, but I really feel it, because we're talking about human beings at the end of this. We're talking about patients.
Could you unpack that a little bit? Because we all know more about the cycle of drug development to marketing to distribution than any of us thought we would 9 months ago, for obvious reasons. And I know that farmers tend to specialize in one part or other of the cycle. So what
Yeah.
kind of products are you guys doing, and what part of the cycle do you focus on? Are you research led, or are you more marketing distribution? Where do you sit within the pharma family?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're very much at the more end stage of what you call the pharmaceutical cycle, which means we take products that are about to go onto market or are on the market, and we help to get those products, commercialize those products out to the patient. We work in two sectors. So we work in oncology, which is essentially cancer products, and we work in rare disease, which means you can have just a handful of people with this disease that you may never have heard of, which makes it quite a niche area, but you get a lot of value from that because the patient becomes quite personal because you really understand their individual stories. So that's essentially where our sweet spot is. That's what we do best. So that's where we concentrate.
So tell me a little bit about how COVID has impacted the firm, your role, and what are your observations, and then later on we'll move on to looking forward, etc. And for all the viewers here, it would be great if anyone who got any questions, please post those questions and we'll answer them as we go through. So there's a Q&A button towards the bottom of your screen, so please click on that and post any questions that's there. Tells us more about what the experience of COVID, what changed in her business.
Yeah, I mean, like everybody, it was a little bit of a shock. Wasn't quite prepared for suddenly going into complete lockdown for all our offices across the globe. For HR, it was unprecedented. And I'm sure, like most organisations, HR took a central role in the communication throughout the early stage through to actually going into lockdown, then through into today. It's been absolutely essential that keeping employees informed, keeping employees connected, just making sure people really feel that they're being included during this new stage of our journey. As a company, it also had a huge impact for us because we could see what was going on in Italy. That was where we first saw the pandemic hit, and we saw incredible scenes on the TV. And what we didn't expect was actually to get contacted by the Papa Giovanni, the 23rd hospital, which is based in Bergamo, one of the worst hit areas.
Yes.
And they contacted us and asked us, could they use one of our products, which is called siltuximab, in the compassionate use for COVID-19 patients that had developed serious respiratory complications. And by compassionate, it means that we were going to give it free of charge. And it was something that it was for a treatment which would not normally be used for that product. But, how could we not try and help? We're helpless watching what's going on, and actually to be able to say, well, yeah, what can we do? How can we support you? Was really important for us. So we did get the product over. Quite a journey in itself, because we had to get the product from Paris to Milan, which was in complete lockdown. And eventually we actually had to pay for a taxi driver to go to Milan, drop the product off, come back and isolate, because that individual then, having gone into Milan, had to isolate for a week. So we were having to pay for all of that. But all that really mattered, all that was in anybody's mind, was getting that product to these patients. Kind of following on from that, we've now had approval from FDA to commence a trial, and that's specifically in hospitalised patients with COVID-19 associated acute respiratory distress syndrome. So essentially with breathing difficulties, which we know is a major side effect for some patients with COVID. So a lot going on for us. And I talked just now about the fact that we are essentially a commercial organisation, but we have now started moving into more of this research because one of the key drivers has been what's been happening over the last 6 months.
The taxi story is really interesting. I think that one of the kind of discoveries during the COVID crisis, for many of us, is that, you know, the perception of pharma products all in their kind of white packets and perfectly produced is almost that they're not produced by human hands and they automatically arrive in locations on time, etc. So, you know, we go into our local Boots or whatever, and that area have all the products ready and they're there. But actually, mechanically getting them on the shelves is not an easy thing. We've all seen this, and the complication of the different components which go together to make the product safe and packaged and ready to go. So that story about taxi cab is absolutely fascinating, Claire.
Yeah, I mean, Tom, you're absolutely right. I think there's a lot of stories that go on behind product to patient, and particularly when you are dealing in something like the rare disease, which is smaller number of cases. We have a product which is for children with a very rare cancer disease called neuroblastoma. It's a particular type of neuroblastoma. And we've had sales representatives standing on the tarmac waiting for the plane to come in to take the product and literally themselves take it to the hospital to get it so the child can start treatment straight away.
Very interesting.
So very personal.
And presumably all made harder as transport across Europe and the world has been so constrained in the last
Absolutely.
year. Yeah, very interesting. So I think that one of the other features and something else you've been doing, Claire, is that you guys are preparing for significant growth, as I understand it, and therefore you rather possibly, you're going to tell me in a minute, possibly unwise, launched a large program to renew your HR technology just as the crisis was starting. So what was that? Why did you do it? And how did it go, Claire?
Yeah, it's been interesting, let's put it that way. Yeah, so I guess when you take a step back and you look at EUSA, we've been on quite an incredible journey so far, but we don't stop there. Actually, this year we were in the top 50 Times Sage Tech Track companies, the fastest growing private technology companies, which kind of was a recognition of this journey we're on. And for us, it's really important we continue to grow so that we can help more patients. Essentially, yeah, it's a simple kind of a strategy to have. And what we have to do is to look at that strategy and say, okay, that's simple. How do we actually make that happen? What is it that each of us in the organisation need to do to make that a reality? So from an HR perspective, it's been really important to look at the systems, processes that we have in place, that I put in place with another member of my team 5 years ago, and actually say, well, okay, they were great when we were 40 people. They're not so great now we're 300. And what happens when we're 3,000? Right. So it's taking that vision of the future and actually putting in place now the infrastructure to support that growth journey.
So what did you do, Claire? So you were you knew you had to do something. You're preparing for that future. In your particular sector, your company, it wasn't that there was a downturn in activity. The demand was increasing, and so was other activities. So what did you decide to do? And can you tell us a bit about trying to implement global processes in a time of COVID?
Absolutely. Yeah, so kind of various, gosh, it's quite hard to really know where to start because there are so many things going on for us as a team. Let's start with the HR system, which was, we have got a very simple system in place at the moment. Been really super. However, I've got these ideas of how I see HR, and I wanted a system that would absolutely support that that would automate a lot of what we're doing, that provides sophistication to what we're doing, that matches the expectations of our employees. They've all come from larger organisations. Well, a lot of them have come from larger organisations. They're used to having the information at the tips of their fingers. They're used to having very slick performance management, talent management, learning development, all those pieces, the bread and butter of what we do. So at the end of last year, started a bit of a beauty parade, looked at the larger tier providers, simply because I want something which will work for us in 5 years' time, not just today. So I would rather invest in something that really will take us on that journey. So with that, we landed on Oracle as the provider, felt that they had the right culture for what we were trying to achieve. It felt like a good relationship could be formed, and the functionality was absolutely in line with what we wanted. So yeah, we started on that journey at the beginning of the year. COVID hit, so suddenly instead of being together, we're kind of dispersed across into our homes and trying to do everything through virtual. But it got a little bit more complicated than that, because unfortunately, a couple of members of my team have gone off. Some of my more experienced members of the team. So my project manager, unfortunately, is off on long-term sickness, and HR advisor with massive amount of knowledge has gone on maternity. So partly it was planned, partly unknown, which threw us into kind of, right, okay, how do we adapt to this? What can we do to actually continue implementing whilst managing COVID, and still actually implementing other processes as well, all at the same time? We recruited a few new members of the team. So that, again, is a challenge, because the whole onboarding virtually is something new for us that we're learning. And for them, it was a baptism of fire, because as they're onboarding, they're also being pulled into the Oracle implementation, because we needed them to be able to focus their time on that. But despite all that, I think we're getting there. We're not quite implemented yet. We're in the latter stages. I hope to be launching early part of next year. But yeah, it really has been interesting. A lot of learning going on.
Interesting. Yeah, I do think it's interesting, and I can see the logic that as an organisation which wants to prepare for growth, and an organisation where many of your colleagues expect a certain standard and quality of software, so therefore you chose one of the bigger and more complicated ones. You did mention also automation as well, and I've got a question actually about that. So are you looking at automation as part of that suite to try and get more out of the technology than many of us do?
Yeah, I mean, we're still exploring it, Tom. We're still exploring the capabilities of the system. And probably one of the learning curves for us was maybe not involving our IT department, and not having enough specialised internal IT knowledge to be able to support us through this. So we're still learning about what we can do. But I guess when I talk about automation, I talk about seamless processes that require an awful lot less human intervention. You know, right now we are very manual. If we're doing an appraisal performance management piece, it's all forms done, written up, put onto a system, trying to track that. I can't see who has and hasn't really had their appraisal. I can't monitor. I don't want to be police, but I want to be able to have an overview and make sure that people are getting what they need from the organisation.
And I'm assuming that is super critical in pharma, because making sure that people are doing their continuous professional education, making sure that their certificates and their activities are up to speed, is actually a licensing a licensing issue that which would, losing one's license because the team are not fully compliant in every single way is kind of one of the critical things to monitor. So you're describing a scenario where the visibility of the data is going to cut down, the analytics is going to cut down an enormous amount of manual activity, and presumably also mistakes, etc. So you're cutting out that human error by doing that, and then automation is a secondary or tertiary activity to add to that later. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because the ability to automate. So we are seeing an awful lot of organizations working on the idea that first, it's getting the processes which are standardized. Second, it's getting the data and analytics to be able to look at them in a kind of factual base. And then thirdly, it's about automating those processes as quickly as possible. Because what we are seeing is that HR teams, the demands on HR teams are very different through the COVID crisis and beyond. Much more reactive, quicker changing, required to do very different things with their teams, etc., than before. And to be absolutely honest, Claire, our view and the view of many of our commentators is that we need to clear the decks of some of the standard day-to-day activities which HR teams have focused on for many years, automate those away to give the capacity to move forward into a faster and more reactive life, actually, or business life at least.
That's exactly my vision, Tom. That is exactly how I see it. It's just, a single button and everything happens. Everything's going out. We can, we're not going to be involved in that day to day, and we can actually do what's really important to the business. And I think over the last couple of months as well, I think COVID has helped us in many ways to get better clarity on what we need to do. And I think communication has become so much better. And what I'm seeing is actually we're much more collaborative with the organisation. It's very easy when you're in HR to sometimes become very myopic about what you're doing and thinking, I need to get this process in because this is what HR does. This is what the textbook tells me that we should have in place. But actually really working with the business to understand, is that actually adding value? Is that really what the business needs? And introducing this system is the opportunity for us to talk to the business and say, this is the process. Does this work? Do you really want that process? What could we do better? Really important.
So re-examining what is done, but from a back to basics kind of approach, where thing is, that is one of the opportunities of this kind of a process and system change, which is that we all accumulate processes and activities over time. There are many efficiencies in the way we all work, I'm sure, and actually seeing those bringing a change of a process and technology change can be a catalyst to seeing those in a new light and re-examine them. I think that's very exciting. Well, I'm really delighted you managed to keep that program going, Claire, during crisis, and full of admiration. I wonder if we can move on to slightly different topics, because I think as well as that, I think that as a growing company, onboarding, bringing people into the firm, sharing culture, how's that working? Now, I know that many of your recruits are experienced hires, but there must be inexperienced hires as well. So how as a joiner of EUSA, are you allowing me to feel part of the team and to kind of join in a way in which we used to do by turning up at Hemel Hempstead and arriving at the office kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a really interesting scenario that we're in, and it's one we've got to adapt to, because I can see this moving into the future. I can see this as becoming the norm rather than as it has been the exception. It's challenging because the manager is so instrumental in this, and sometimes that's a little bit out of your control. There's only so much support you can give to to the manager to make sure they're doing the right onboarding in this virtual environment. And because of the fast pace that we move as an organisation, often for a manager, it's a critical need to get a role in, which means it's almost kind of, I need you to be in, I need you to be running from day one. So actually taking that step back to say, oh, hold on a sec, what's the culture of this organisation? What are the expectations? What do we need from you? Is really important. And one of the things that certainly we've just been put in place is an onboarding session just solely on culture. I'm sure a lot of people will be going, oh, but that's what we do anyway, but we didn't. And this pandemic really highlighted to us that we need to take time out to make sure every new starter in the company understands what is the culture, what is the values, what does that mean and translate for them in their day-to-day work. Really important. We actually defined new values at the beginning of the year as a whole company at conference. Everybody contributed to that. So really important. We put the time into defining those. We've now got to make sure they're lived. And the best people to make those live are new starters.
Yes, I mean, it is very interesting because we, a lot of our new starter induction, the demonstration of culture, etc., for many of us was defined by our bricks and mortar office presence, working within a team. It's a very easy exercise to invite a new starter into a company. You immediately start seeing the values and culture and walking through the doors. And then in joining a team, it's almost automatically instilled as you sit down in a team environment, and it became, you know, it's part of the air. We're all sharing different air at the moment, so we're not sharing it in the way we used to.
Yeah.
So actually, kind of creating virtual ways to share that culture, I think, is one of the new challenges for all of us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I saw it in my own team. I said to you that I've introduced or brought in a number of new people into the team. We actually have sort of 4 or 5 new starters this year in a very small team. That's a lot of change. And I didn't realise until we had a team meeting and we were kind of resetting our direction and sort of really understanding our priorities for the rest of the year, that they didn't have a common understanding of what our culture was. And that was a real wake-up call for me, because I had this assumption that they'd come in, they heard, they saw, and they'd immediately absorbed it. And that wasn't the case. And that really enabled me to then focus on it for the organisation as a whole. But it was only seeing it within my own team that made me realise that I was missing such an essential piece for the organisation.
So yes, we've talked about onboarding and bringing new starters on, but I'm very interested in the other end of the cycle as well. It strikes me, Claire, and that retention is, although a non-issue for much of the COVID crisis, many of our colleagues, etc., are the way that is very different from what they signed up for. So I imagine that retention is a very different thing from what it was pre-COVID, and starting to becoming a something we need to attend to. What are your thoughts on retention in a time of COVID?
That's a really good question, Tom, and actually very topical and top of my mind, I'd say, right now. We spend a lot of money attracting good people into the organisation. We invest time in developing those individuals, nurturing them within the organisation to become great contributors. And, you know, we've got fantastic people at EUSA. It's just absolutely just so proud. But retention is the absolute key to it. You get these fantastic people, we need to keep them. And I've really seen a change over the last 6 months. As an industry, it's still extremely competitive in terms of talent retention. There's actually a lot of recruitment still going on in pharma. But our retention issues aren't so much around people leaving to go to other pharmaceutical companies. It's much more around a change in lifestyle and mindset, which has come about as a result of being at home, spending time with family, spending time with relatives who may be elderly or need care, some other form of care. It's about people that realise that actually they don't want to be commuting, or they don't want to travel around the world. They actually want to be close to home, and the role that they do isn't the role for them. So it's a total change in career for them. And we've seen that several times with people in the organisation are saying, do you know what, I'm going to go and move back to home, wherever home is, Africa, Asia, or actually I'm leaving pharmaceuticals, I want to go and do something totally different. And I think what we as practitioners have to be aware of is this is an ongoing change in mindset. And as we come out of COVID and as we enter what will be the new normality, is helping people to transition back into working, maybe in the office partly, and to stop them from leaving the industry or stop leaving the organisation by providing support to enable them to get the flexibility they need, to the less travel, etc. So I think it's a really important consideration for us.
Yes, and I think that this, I think everything you're saying is what other commentators have been thinking about too. I think that the struggle which everyone's grappling with at the moment is really, how does one provide the same quality of experience as what people used to get from their work, etc., and how does one provide the level of flexibility which people are looking for, and yet still drive the kind of performance which we've seen before. So, many of our performance measures, etc., are not measures which necessarily apply moving forward, and people's satisfaction measures are very different from the things we have been measuring and thinking about for this crisis, and to keep up with that and start defining what that new set of demands on us and our people is a fascinating journey, I think, Claire.
Yeah, I think you used the key word, there's flexibility. That's what it's going to be, but in my opinion, that's what it's going to be about, Tom. And we're doing a lot of work on that at the moment, an awful lot of work around defining flexibility as we come out of COVID, particularly for the head office, which is where most of our office-based staff are. There's 90 of us in the offices in Hemel. And we were very much one of the organisations that believed you needed to be in the office to get the work done. You talked about the bricks and mortar, the culture, all those things were very centralised in the office. That we can't rely on that now. And so there are so many aspects we have to look at: the culture, the performance, flexibility, all these things, and mindset changes.
We've got another question from the audience in that area,
Yeah.
actually. So is this freeing you up to be able to source people from a broader geographical and other skill set function? Presumably, the fact that it's unlikely that we're all going to be in the office every day means that it no longer matters where people are located. Are you thinking through that, or are you still geographically bound?
No, totally, Tom. It's I think it's going to be absolutely crucial, particularly with Brexit as well. We've got the Brexit piece with the change in people coming across from mainland Europe into the UK, etc., which is where, from pharma perspective, Switzerland is a big hub for pharmaceuticals. So that's a big consideration for us. So absolutely, it's opening up the world. There's still mindset changes that need to come with that, because I think some people will still think when we come out of COVID, it's back to the office, it's back to how it was. It's not going to be like that. Within my own team, I have somebody who's based in France, commuting over to the UK every week. I'm changing that now and said, you work from France in the future. There's no need for you actually to come across to Hemel every week. We've just shown that we can communicate across Zoom very, very easily. So why waste the money, time coming over? Yes, we still need to establish and have some face-to-face contact from time to time, but we can work that out between us. So
well, I love that message. In fact, I'm going to make that pretty much our final message, because we're kind of running out of time. But I love the idea that from pharma, we are getting the message that COVID is enabling. And pharma's, been busy through COVID, to say the least. And pharma is telling us that we need to prepare for opening up the world, that this is an opportunity to do that and tap into skills from more countries and locations. I think that's a really exciting message for us to take into the new year. And I'm going to, that's the main piece I'm going to retain from our conversation, which is actually our ability to drive global thinking, global talent is kind of pushed upon us. That opportunity has appeared through COVID in a way it did not exist before. And I think that's really exciting and heartening for so many of the clients. The penultimate event for this year. We will be doing one more this year and then a new series in the new year. And I am delighted that, and thank you all for joining us today. So thank you very much for taking time out of your day, and I'll speak to you soon.